morning. My name is Charles Hankins. I am on the programming team here at the Wichita Public Library, and I am here for ReadICT category Reading a Favorite. My first favorite is The Godfather by the great Mario Puzo. I first read The Godfather when I was 11 or 12 years old, which would truly have horrified my parents. It still, to me, is one of the greatest reading experiences you can have. It was recommended to me when I was a kid by a family friend of ours from Sicily, actually. She had an amazing accent and a husky voice, and it was her favorite novel, and she read it over and over again. If you haven't read it yet, please do. My second favorite that I have reread God knows how many dozens of times over the years is The Martian Chronicles by Ray Bradbury. The book began as a collection of Mars-themed short stories, and there are people who dismiss it because they think of it as a short story collection rather than a perfect novel. I'm not one of them. I think it's a perfect novel. I think the shards and fragments fit together so perfectly. It's incredibly moving. Bradbury's vision of Mars is like a pristine desert vista by Georgia O'Keeffe that is progressively vandalized by the presence of mankind. There's a moral judgment about the environment that Bradbury makes very clear, but he doesn't overdo. There are sequences in this novel that you will never forget. A scene where a lone astronaut meets his fate in a replica of his childhood home at the hands of Martians masquerading as his family. I can't think of a more horrific scene. I highly recommend The Martian Chronicles, and think of it as a novel. Don't think of it as a short story collection. My third choice for great books to reread, and again, one I've read dozens of times over the years. I recently listened to an audio version of this book. The thing that surprised me about it, the reader on the novel he sounded angry, he sounded aggressive. He was going for, I think, the aggression in hard-boiled detective fiction. But whenever I read the book, I feel that the tone is rueful. He captures Los Angeles at a particular time in the early 50s, several years after the high at the end of World War II had begun to fade, when the crime was beginning to uptick, when the problems were beginning to make themselves clear. It's a disappointed book. It's a book about the disappointments of friendship. The great idea here is that the detective is searching for a missing alcoholic writer, an alcoholic writer who bears a great resemblance to Raymond Chandler. And he has to pass through a series of fraudulent quack doctors to get to the writer, to find the writer, and find the story. It's a wonderful idea. I'm going to read a little bit of this because Chandler writes to be read out loud, and this is why we love him. It's really about the distinction here between jail and prison. In jail, a man has no personality. He has a minor disposal problem and a few entries on reports. Nobody cares who loves or hates him, what he looks like, what he did with his life. Nobody reacts to him unless he gives trouble. Nobody abuses him. All that is asked of him is that he go quietly to the right cell and remain quiet when he gets there. There's nothing to fight against, nothing to be mad at. The jailers are quiet men without animosity or sadism. All this stuff you read about men yelling and screaming, beating against the bars, running spoons along them, guards rushing in with clubs, all that is for the big house. A good jail is one of the quietest places in the world. You could walk through the average cell block at night and look in through the bars and see a huddle of brown blanket, or a head of hair, or a pair of eyes looking at nothing. You might hear a snore. Once in a while, you might hear a nightmare. The life in a jail is in suspension, without purpose or meaning. In another cell, you might see a man who cannot sleep or even try to sleep. He's sitting on the edge of his bunk doing nothing. He looks at you or doesn't. You look at him. He says nothing and you say nothing. There is nothing to communicate. This is why we love Raymond Chandler. And as Anthony Burgess said in his book 99 Novels, if this isn't literature, what is? My last choice for books to read and reread many times over the years. This book takes several reads to fully digest, actually. It won the Pulitzer Prize, deservedly so. It is The Power Broker, Robert Moses in the Fall of New York by the great Robert A. Caro. In the recent TV series Pretend It's a City, the Netflix series by Martin Scorsese and Fran Lebowitz. Fran Lebowitz is clad in crime scene booties, and she's walking through this vast miniature of Manhattan, which is part of a museum now in New York City. Martin Scorsese mentions that, Robert Moses built this miniature. He built miniatures first of his massive works project, his expressways and parks. She says, maybe he should have just stuck to miniatures. And I think that anybody who makes it through The 1,162 pages of The Power Broker would ultimately agree with that assessment because he had a vast architectural vision of a future populated by streams of traffic, but he absolutely, utterly neglected the people of New York. This caught up with him in the 60s. There was an outcry against the neighborhoods that he was replacing with expressways, and his inability to explain why this was necessary caught up with him. In the age of television, became painfully apparent, and his reputation began to decline. But for more than 50 years, he was the most powerful man probably in the country. He went up against Franklin Delano Roosevelt when he was just a civil servant in New York City, and he won. He beat the then President of the United States in a dispute that they had. And for 50 years after, he maintained it, for 50 years, from the 20s to the 60s, he maintained his power. Every dime that went into a toll booth in the 5 boroughs, he had control over how it was spent. I think that reading about him is like getting 3 master's degrees at once: public administration, urban planning, and not to mention modern American history. The highest recommendation possible for this book, the size and weight of about 2 Denver phone books. These would be my recommendations for ReadICT category, rereading a favorite. For more recommendations, please go to wichitalibrary.org.